wengine viongozi wa mataifa tofauti hapa barani Afrika. Kwa sasa basi tuelekee katika jumba hilo la kimataifa la mikutano la KICC. Kumbuka kwamba pembeni kuna mikutano tofauti inayoendelea, lakini yote yanaangazia swala moja, mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, na hivi sasa kuna kongamano linahusisha wanahabari, wahariri na kadhalika kuweza kuzungumzia jinsi ya kutoa mawasiliano na habari na hata kuripoti taarifa kuhusiana na athari za mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Ni kongamano ama mkutano ambao unaendeshwa na shirika la Editors Guild. Hebu tusikize kwa kifupi yanayoendelea.
Thanks to the globe, we also need to bring to the fore the role of the oceans, the role of blue economy, mangroves, which African countries have an abundance of, so that we also bring this into the balance sheet, as His Excellency William Ruto said yesterday, and we actually quantify the natural capital of the African continent, and this really needs to come out strongly. So the content of the summit is still lagging behind, we would say. Also going towards COP28, as Benson has said, we expect a lot of media coverage on the Nairobi Declaration. What does it mean? What do the commitments? We saw a lot of deal room commitments, which also have not been significantly covered in the media. Who has committed to what? The media has a role of being a gateway and also of providing the balances and the checks. So we need to provide this coverage of the different commitments that are coming out of this summit, so that it's not another talk show, but it's more an action summit towards COP28 and providing real solutions to the African people and the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. As the German government, we have committed to support some of the media houses post this summit, so that we bring this capacity into the newsroom. We provide expertise, opinion, so that this narrative beyond the summit and the declaration that will be read out today can provide input into what the COP28 African position would be, and also strengthen the media capacity beyond the summit and also COP28. Thank you.
Everything comes out media capacity. Where do we find the linkages? And the pledge that you want to help is very welcome. Thank you so much, Ruth. And I think it's important because at the center of this conversation, there is the human being, the person who is affected. How do we tap into the opportunities, as opposed to writing the story that we are used to getting, the story that tells you a quick story that will get you the negative story. What opportunities that we see in this? Thank you so much, Ruth. Peter, you sit at the center of this conversation from the Kenyan government and the African Union. Do you think the media has been able to capture this? And to what extent have you also involved the media in a way that to see the urgency of the moment? Thank you, Peter.
Great. My answers are short, sharp, and focused. Why? The media has always sent a narrative that politics is more important than life. And if there could be a politician here, the hall would be full. Look, climate change is a life-threatening thing. But because the narrative has been given that you have to be a politician by none other than the media, then you can be listened to. But when an opportunity comes like this, and when my grandmother, who is in the village somewhere in Wajir, being heavily affected by the impact of climate change, which is the warming of the earth, and now everywhere in this country is warm. Nobody is telling my grandmother in a plain, simple language that because of the heat, she needs to change her lifestyle, because there is not enough water, there is not enough food, there is no samaki that I used to eat millions of years ago, no milk mursi. But we say we are strong in politics. Wrong message. Two, capacity is not given. Capacity is built, capacity is required. The media has never required to build its capacity in the alternative emerging key issues. Look the analysis. It's just 20 years ago. Today, we are so high, the narrative has already changed. When you look at the opportunity, and I sit at the center of the climate, in 2017, having seen that there was a very significant gap in terms of reporting climate change and environmental challenges, when I was then in the office of the Prime Minister, I dedicated significant resources, money, to train the Editors Guild, and none attended my meeting. That one was the beginning of the problem. What did they do? They sent very young interns to come and listen to me. Today, if they listened to me then, what Benson and Moraa is talking about should have not been there, because they say, oh, this is nothing. We did not stop there, because we knew, we had an idea that you need resources to build your capacity. In 2017, because I sit also in the Green Climate Fund as the national designated authority which gives in this money, when we were now making the readiness support of $3 million, the only people I thought and I think about and put for you $300,000 to train you in collaboration with FAO. What did I get? You can guess. The misreporting, because there was no seriousness in picking that training. Today, we are here again. When you listen to carbon trading and analysis, what is being talked about, and carbon credit and carbon trading is not new anyway. These are the things we started in 1997. And you look at the narrative as if it is now, it came the other day. Wrong messaging. Finally, misidentification of simple things which bring change on the papers, on the TV, on the radios is really, really a serious thing. Here, we launch, we not even launch, we had a real cash check of 7.3 billion going to all countries. Real cash. In fact, when my president talked, we said that because there are hot air around in these things, we could even go to central bank and get a cash because it's ready-made. How was it reported? A small thing in the corner somewhere. Yet, the Editors Guild are here and living in this country. The CEO who tracked me, I know you are in a village. That money is going to the village, in the ward, in scale. Nobody picked it up. But we have an opportunity, sir. We are here for you. There is an opportunity. Partnership is available. Resources is available. We will partner.
We take the challenge. We take the challenge. And resources available, partnerships available. The ball is on our court. It's something for us to reflect on, that the opportunities that we have seen. And something that is just raised, that are we chasing the quick story and failing to go for the real story? Where is the disconnect? What is it? Is it about our training? Is it about who do we speak to? Do we know our audience? Pam, sitting and listening to Benson, to Ruth, and Peter, as an editor, a person at the center of taking sure and making sure, picking the information, assigning, and at the end of the day, aggregating the content and disseminating it. What is your take? Do you think we have missed something in the course of this conversation as the media? Are we touching base, or we are doing our own things?
Good afternoon, Steve. I think I'll just go back to the year 2008 when I first started reporting on climate change, and I can actually count with my fingers how many of us then were reporting. And even then, trying to just put even that story on air was a big problem. And I think at the time, in 2008, climate change was a distance. I mean, we could not relate it with what was happening, because I think we were reporting climate change with the effects of coal mining in Poland, with the Maldives that were about to just sink. And I remember we even covered a small cabinet session that went on under the sea in the Maldives. So the climate change in the beginning, I think we could not relate with it. But right now, I think it is home with us, and we are seeing, I mean, then I can see quite a number of people here whom we used to report with. So the numbers and the interest has grown, but I think there's a gap in terms of training capacity, and more so with the editors, because we hadn't mainstreamed climate change in the universities. I mean, right now, I know UN has, they're now doing even a master's degree in climate change and everything. Most of us have learned climate change just at work. So we are taking the challenge, and I cannot argue more that we do not that we don't prioritize climate change. Like, I think from here, one of the first things we have to do is what he's talking about, the flock money. I think it's quite key. It's one of the things we have to monitor in the counties. Are they going to utilize these funds? And I think every now and then, and maybe, I don't know if to fault governments, if to fault, the last session, the last COP, there was a big deal about loss and damage, the fund itself. Have we implemented the fund? So we keep moving on to funds. And so I think sometimes journalists get a bit confused with there's so many funds in this climate change. There is we first had the African Green Climate Fund. There is the Loss and Damage Fund. There was even Adaptation Fund. Nobody even talks about it anymore. I don't know where it is. Let me say the truth. Then I think the most important thing is an assumption. We have big words that have come in: greenwashing, carbon tax, It's not bad, but I think if we are able to localize and be able to interpret what we speak in the meetings, like, I know we are talking about carbon credit and trading and benefit sharing bill. What is it? What does it mean? How does it impact Wafula in Kitale? How does it impact Ole Kantai in Kajiado? So I think for journalists, sometimes we want to relate the big terms, the big conversations with the villages, but with the villagers or the communities themselves. So I think from the Nairobi Declaration, I'm hoping, and with the newsroom itself, we are able to concretize the outcome of the Nairobi Declaration and give it a human perspective. Without a human perspective, like, I'll be honest with you, at one point I felt this was a talk shop, talk. Then I said, you know what, this talk shop is important, it's for policies, but how does it relate to Wafula? How does it relate to Wanjiru? And how does it relate to Kantai? It's our role as media, I know, but it's also the role of my friend here. Sometimes scientists talk big things, big terms, big terms. Kindly, just come down to us, and we will also come down. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Pam has put it the way it is, that the jargon. Yesterday I met a reporter who told me, sir, I've been here all day. I don't know what green hydrogen is. I don't know what fund is. So there is also the element that journalists are saying, please talk the ordinary language, because storytelling is about ordinary people. It's about us. So again, we have to find a place where we can converge, a point of convergence where we have a discussion. What does carbon credit mean? Can you put it in what I feel in my pocket? Because when you talk about big terms, we lose it. And Pam, you're right that a lot of those things are also something. But the challenge also comes, are we seeking that knowledge like Peter said? Are we seeking to partner? Are we seeking to humanize these stories? Put the person at the center of it. Ruth, you work for an international media house. How does it approach? Because the experience at that level, how have you approached the issues of climate change and other technical issues that we think are technical, but they touch about our lives? How is that different? You've both local experience and international experience. Because how can that be brought to us so that we understand it?
All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, good afternoon. Just picking up from what my colleague Pamela Asigi has said, we as international media do not operate in a bubble. We just operate as colleagues who work here in Kenya, local media. And the issue of climate change is crucial, not just within our environs, but across, seeing the impact that the climate has had on communities, most of which has been adverse. So the reporting has been very sustained, I think, because we have gone from one extreme to another. I remember in this patch of ours, there was in beginning 2020, there was, the locust invasion, then followed by that, there was the extreme drought situations, and which have been reported. I'm glad that today I have an opportunity to sit here and mingle and hobnob with some of the scientists and experts that are behind the stories that we tell, because access to them has been almost very difficult. There's a lot of bureaucracy. When we want to speak to an official, we are told you have to write a letter, you have to make a call. There's too much bureaucracy and red tape sometimes that makes it so difficult for us to get to the other end of the story. So we find ourselves sometimes telling the story in an almost one-sided way. For instance, when we were scratching our heads and thinking of what would be the stories, or what will we be, as journalists, what will we be telling to reflect on the Africa Climate Summit that was coming up, we got invited to a meeting with the CS for Environment a little bit late, just I think a week or a month or a few weeks to when the summit was going to be held. Does that allow us as journalists enough time to package, to put together material or stories that we need to tell? It is not. Please consider us. We are not just working with one platform nowadays, because our newsrooms are converged. We have to offer something for TV, we have to offer something for radio, we have to offer something even for print. When we go out there, we have to look for various elements and sources and people to tell the story. Now, those are some of the challenges that we have. Today, I talked to somebody who called me from one of the organizations and wanted us to report the story as is of today. And we told them, give us enough time to go to the field, to speak to the case studies, the people that Pam was speaking about, the people that you and I will relate to. Because often, climate change stories, science stories are very complex. We deal with a lot of figures, with a lot of data, with a lot of those technical terms that you need to break down, to crunch to that listener down there who is not elitist as we are, who doesn't have the knowledge that you have. So to break that down, take me to a villager down there, take me to the market where some of these innovations, some of this money that Mr. Peter Odeng is talking about is going to benefit. If you tell me you're going to build maybe villages that are compliant to the environment or to the climate as it is changing, who is going to benefit? Can we get access to these beneficiaries? Once you make it easy and possible for us to access these people, the newsmakers, I think we will be on the same page. And also just bear in mind, we need a lot of heads up, a lot of time to do that. So we will appreciate lots of opportunities for embed with you. Sometimes we will pay for it. My organization will never take a free embed. We will ensure that we take care of our own budgets. But those media houses that are still young and upcoming, please support them into telling those stories. Resources
resources are very important. You know what the media is going through at the moment. A lot of cut downs, a lot of restructuring, a lot of redundancies. They also do not have the privilege to even fund their reporters to go out into the grassroots, into the places where the stories should be told from. So please try as much as you can to support journalists to go to those long miles to get the stories to be told. I'm happy as the opportunity that we've got from GIZ, the opportunity that we've gotten from the Kenya government through Mr. Odeng, that we are here today. Let's look at collaboration. Let's look at building capacity amongst our journalists. When Pam was speaking, I put myself in a situation where, as she talked how the climate change or climate stories, how the coverage began. It has evolved, but has our knowledge, the capacity been grown? I don't think so. And if any opportunities are made available, it's mostly the reporters. You forget about the editor, who also needs to get a bit of the nuances, a bit of the terminology. And this editor is the same person who is going to green and okay the story. They are dealing with so many other stories and so many other issues that are coming up. It's like sort of like conflict of priority. Which is the story that I'm going to give the top line? Which is the top story for us today? On a day when the fire in South Africa has happened, the Joburg fire where 64 people have died and so on, and we are talking about the Africa Climate Summit. As a news editor, I'm conflicted. Which will be the top story of the day? Will I give it to Climate Summit, or will I give it to the fire in Johannesburg, for instance? So we are constantly dealing with these sort of dilemmas on a constant day. So let's make climate change stories, can I say, in quotes, sexy, appealing, because some people have given us feedback. Climate change stories are boring. How do we make them interesting? The challenge is up to us as journalists, as editors, to do that, because it is our work anyway. We signed up to it. But also from the other end, can the climate experts, the shapers of this discourse, help us to make it sell? In media, it's all about selling. We are businessmen. I will not give space to something that people will just look at and move on to the next story. I will go for that will bring me audience, that will bring me the shillings, the money. It's all about the money at the end of the day. But then in the long term, I know that the effects of the adverse effects that we are seeing will have a huge impact even on us. So if we don't open our eyes and start smelling the coffee, I think we'll be too late into the game. So let's work together. I know that we have an opportunity. COP28 is not so far off. It's coming up soon in UAE. Can we create that platform? Can we sustain this discussion? How are we going to ensure that after today, after this Africa Climate Summit closes, that we will keep that discussion going? How do we do that? I think the onus is on all of us to ensure that we look for more perspectives, try to get more stories highlighting the voices, the champions of climate change in wherever part of the continent they are, bring them up into the forefront to tell the stories. I would also like us to follow the shillings, the cents, smell them. When a donor comes up and says they have committed 70 billion USD to support climate change, can they show us? Can we track that money and know where it is going to, what it is being used to? Can we ask for accountability? Can we make sure that we can come back here and sit here again maybe 1 year later and tell the people who are listening to us, the global citizens, that this is what the money that was offered did. This is how we followed it to the end. I think the challenge is on both sides. I would say that.
Yes, thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Ruth. Listening to what Ruth has said, where are those walls? Ruth and Pam have said scientists and experts are locked up in their room and throwing out sounds and terminologies. And these sounds and terminology, they hope somebody else will pick it, and that person is supposed to be the editor or the journalist. I would like to pose this to Peter as one, before I open up the floor to the questions. That you sit at the center and you've been involved in climate aspects, strategies, and training, and making sure that whatever you do, you are not doing it just because you have to do it. What are you doing? What plans do you have? What messages did you make sure that you had what you wanted to achieve from this Africa Climate Summit? Is your messaging clear? You know, these are the lines, and taken time to walk and discuss that one and say, this is, because we are all in it. Nobody is saying, it's not a blame game. What have you put on the ground towards going to COP28?
Great. I will not focus on this Africa Climate Summit. We started long. The debates in Hall started in when? The first major one was in 1975, in Stockholm. Why UNEP was brought here. 1975. Many of you were not born yet. Me, I was born millions of years before that. That was meant because after the Second World War, people thought they fought so hard, and now they want to consume beyond their means. And these ones were led by the Americans. If you are here, they won the war, now they wanted to enjoy. They ate until now all the natural resources were almost over. It is at that conference now where we say that if we continue to consume the way we are doing now, then the next generation will not be there. That one was the first debate. That first debate yielded UNEP. But between UNEP, 1975, things never changed. Indeed, it became worse. And in 1985, the Brundtland report, you know, the former Norwegian prime minister, the UN said, wait a moment, things are not going on with, the way we thought. The Brundtland report came and clearly identified 3 elements. And that is where the name sustainable development came. That we have to have a development that takes into account environment, social fabrics, economics, and put the people, the human diversity, the ecosystem at the centricity of that development.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
But before that, what did I do? What did we do as the government of Kenya? We changed the narrative. The climate change, which now attracts many, we said, in the National Treasury, we came up with the terminology climate finance, financing change, because change is there. And within that, I was the first environmental man in the National Treasury, and they asked, what is this guy doing here? You should be in Ministry of Environment. But I'd say, no. Your GDP, 55%, is based on the natural resources which are heavily affected by climate change. And if I am not here, you will be planning for nothing. And that is how I changed the narrative from the top to the bottom. And today, Kenya is the leading beneficiary of the Green Climate Fund with 17 projects approved at the cost of $844 million. It is here. Every day, there are delegations from all African countries to come and see what we are doing. Every day, I've never seen a journalist coming to discuss with me in that office. Today, every green champions are in the villages called green champions, and they're shaping the narrative. Yes. That is what we have done, and that is where we have. But we've also given the money. FLOCA is a $300 million, 1.50 billion USD.
Okay.
Pesa Masinani.
Thank you. Peter says he has the story and he needs the story to come. In 1 minute before, just 30 seconds, Ruth, in your work as working with the communities and other stakeholders, where do you see the place of the journalists and how you can find that convergence?
Thank you. I think for us, and we've been actually having this discussion in the office, how do we bring out the work that we do and link it to the impacts in the communities? Because And I want to pick up from, I think it was Pam's point of saying, I think it was Ruth, let's make climate change, for lack of a better word, sexy or interesting. But I think it's also about how do we communicate the impacts of climate change and link it to the impacts on GDP and also on local the livelihoods of the local communities, and more importantly, how we report this. We have been working with a couple of media houses. We have packaged the work that we do in renewable energy. We work in different sectors, and we are doing a lot of work in providing improved cook stoves and also in clean cooking. We're providing solutions in e-mobility. We are providing solutions in climate policy planning, but also in counties, supporting them to institutionalize climate change. But now, more importantly, we need to bring to the discussion the reporters, the editors. We worked with a lot of reporters, but now we're focusing more on editors, bringing this support of capacity building. It's a commitment we have done, and we are going to do post the summit, supporting them to understand how to bring out this discussion. But already, let me confirm to you that I really think climate change is interesting. It's not boring, because now this is where the money is going. This is where the governments are heavily investing. We are here with a lot of announcements, the billions that are being announced. But it's also for you. I think the media has a big role to play, to follow the money, as you say, but more importantly, to make sure that these commitments actually followed through, and we have the money given to these countries and to the communities.
Yeah, very good. Well put. Money is there. We just need to follow the money. Benso, just 1 second. The legalese, the jargon. What are you doing from your side to break that jargon so that we pick it up and understand it? In 30 seconds, please.
Thank you very much, Ken. I want to encourage the journalists who are here, particularly the young ones, that there is hope. We've been working on this as an organization, Institute for Law and Environmental Governance, with journalists for the last almost 2 decades. The first lot of journalists we worked with who took particular interest in this are in high places. And I'm talking, one is sitting here, Pamela Sigi, went for a scholarship funded by Danida through a program that we were running. And you can see where she is. And I think they were there with Joe Agayo, who is also a leader in one of the media houses, Ochieng Ugodo. Rosalia has recently done her master's at no institution less than MIT. It takes personal interest. The last 2 that I've talked about have won global awards. Time Magazine, Commonwealth, environmental journalists. So there is a lot in this area and a lot of support that would come your way if you took particular interest.
Right.
It takes partnerships. We've partnered with Maseno University, for example, and a number of other institutions to develop curriculum for media people who are interested in climate change. There is no option. There will be no shortcut. In this one, you must invest, learn the language, the jargon, and we are not trained as communicators. It is for the journalists to learn how to understand the language and step it down. So that is the challenge I would give to the Editors Guild and give to each individual journalist who is here, that there is hope and there is room, and it is very sweet, as I believe some of you who have tasted it can attest.
Hope, sweet, and those who have tasted it can testify. So I want to open this floor to the, well, a lot of interest. I'll go this way. Let me take the wave from this side, and just one question and keep it short and sharp. I'll start with the lady here and then move backwards, yeah. Yeah. Where's the mic? Where's the mic? Oh, just move that to the mic, huh? Yeah.
Mary
Say your name.
Goretti from the University of Nairobi. My concern is about how reporters report on women's stories and climate change. Now there's going to be finance. I'm not seeing women placed where they can get the carbon credit. So media people, think of how you package women's stories so that you make them real, and also harness on the knowledge we have at the university on how climate affects women. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joe, go to the mic. Oh, there's somebody there. Okay.
Yeah, hi. My name is Anne Faith Birungi from the African Youth Mobilization for Conference of Parties. So I'm the Research, Education and Training Contact Point. And I wanted to know from you, what are the opportunities for capacity building to the public and to the leaders to inform them on adaptation, mitigation, and aspects of climate change? So I also have a question on the languaging. We came together as the Children and Youth Constituency of the UNFCCC, and we created a translation working group. So what we are doing is we are interpreting and translating information in UN languages and indigenous languages. I wanted to know, especially on the terminology on climate change that's not clearly defined and is ambiguous, what are the challenges about this and how are you dealing with this to ensure that information gets to the people? Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charles Chigiri. I coordinate a project called Climate Promise in Mida, Kilifi County. I'm here to speak on behalf of the villagers. So I had little complaint that the practitioners in the media industry have problem in picking the climate language. Now, if my mother in the village is slowly picking the language, what about a media practitioner who spent years in the university can't pick this language? Is it about interest or is it about understanding the language? That's one. Two, it's all about the interest in stories. Where I come from, there is a very hot topic, and the media is just putting it aside. The nuclear story in Oyombo village. A lot is being discussed, but I have not seen any national conversation at the media rooms. What I'm seeing is that the local social media groups discussing, but there is nothing being discussed, especially at the national level. And this issue is very serious, because in as much as maybe the nuclear plant in Oyombo is very important, there is no adequate participation with the people who are being affected there.
Okay.
So my concern is, where is this interest in following the media stories coming in? Is it about the money, as someone said, or is it about the people?
Thank you. Keep it short. Keep it short.
Good morning. My name is Shadrach Agaki. I want to speak on behalf of the people who are supposed to sit on that stage. And I want to steal a secret for you, that you're not going to expect some policies to be made by politicians. For you to help them make those issues that you want to be legislated public, because politicians only will take issues that are public issues for them to legislate.
Thank you.
Secondly, Ken, just a minute. The other thing is, as journalists, are we thinking about the system that when you are reporting the footbridge at the Langata Road, are you connecting it to several issues that the people can benefit?
Thank you.
To you, Peter.
Thank you. Joe, that was more of a comment and some...
Thank you. Not a question. As a journalist, I think I have what would more be like a contribution. Climate change affects all of us. It's not an issue of journalists versus them. It's an issue of collaboration. How do we make this collaboration sustainable? How do we make it consistent? And how do we make it such that it has an impact? I'd request that the people in places and institutions that deal with this, you have a structured engagement. You already now have the Kenya Editors Guild that you can easily have as an access route to the newsrooms. Work with us at the Kenya Editors Guild. Let us develop programs. Let us develop training manuals. Let us develop capacity such that we tackle this as an issue that is not just of national interest, but of our livelihoods. If we do that, if we collaborate, if we partner, and we make it sustainable, then I want to believe we will be having a different conversation when the next Africa Climate Summit is held, because just like Africa has done it for the first time now, this should be the starting point of involving media and ensuring that media is part and parcel of this conversation right from the start. Thank you.
Yes, we'll take that question, the answer, then the other ones will keep short, but don't Okay, keep it short and one question.
Hello, my name is Daisy Love. I'm an environmental scientist, but I took the path of environmental journalism. So my question is, sometimes we have the story as organizations, but it's so hard to reach the journalists. The small media houses might be willing to come, but when it comes to the big ones like ATN Nation, it gets really hard to get them. Maybe you could find a way to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we take that before we take the other ones? Oh,
okay.
Yes.
My name is Kennedy. I work with JZ, supporting the Summit with Communications. But my question goes around harmonizing commercial and editorial coverage. How do you ensure that the coverage that comes to you as editors takes the same light as those that are commercial? Because we realize that a number of times if it's commercial, it gets really very good plight. But if it's supposed to be editorial, it's very controversial. So where is the harmony on the same? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. Wow. So what we'll take those questions. We'll take that last one and then we just move out. Huh? 2 more questions. All right.
Okay. My name is Martin Mugo from Stand Up Shoutouts. My question is, what can be done to attract the attention of youth? Because on a matter, you find that carbon credits to us youth is new, but it has been brought up that carbon credits has existed from a very long time. Yeah. So what can we do for us youth to have our attention to matters to climate change, and how can we help the panel, or rather the older generation, to help us when it comes to climate change?
Thank you. Very quick one.
My name is Evelyn Amvoa. I work with the Africa Biodiversity Collaborative Group. My question is on bringing the person who is affected by climate change at the center of it all, as you mentioned, and specifically bringing the role of the women in the urban cities that are affected by climate change. You've talked about Wafula, people in arid areas and other places. We talked about elephant and people who are living with the elephants and fighting for water, but it affects you and I in the city. Right now, as a modern woman, you have to make calls to get water. We don't have basic water, basic sanitation. Those are the issues that affect us, climate change here in urban cities. There's loss and damage. How does that translate to us in terms of loss and damage? Children are growing up without water. We cope with bottled water in urban cities. Those are real key issues that affect us in terms of climate change. So we need to move the conversation from the rural woman or somebody else and bring it to ourselves as urban cities, because it affects us dearly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's more of a comment, and thank you. That one, yeah.
Thank you.
2 seconds, please. Quick one.
My name is Paul Chepsoy. With me, colleague Daniel Kobe, representing indigenous communities in this room. Our big concern as an indigenous organization and communities is a language of climate discussion in this summit. We have noticed so much that the academia, the governments, institutions have already changed the language of climate discussion, that we indigenous communities, which so many of you discussed, we are most affected. We are not even, we don't have a lot of audience in this forum. Lastly, there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of, let me just ask this question. I visited some rooms that discuss about 2 things that confuse us indigenous communities. For example, there's discussion of avoidance and removal of carbon credit. Those discussions are the things that indigenous communities and organizations are grappling with. Lastly, it's about benefit sharing. Benefit sharing is a discussion that is not clear about us indigenous communities and organizations. Even the government doesn't have that clear structure on benefit sharing.
Okay, thank you. So that one, and then we'll have one last one. Keep it short.
Yes, please. Yeah, my name is Juma Gesicho. I'm an all-round in journalism. When first went to the newsroom in 1975 when UNEP was being formed. Right. Mine is only one word. Big talk, and after this big talk, nothing. My challenge is this now.
Okay, thank you.
Journalists, you plant a lot of trees, you do a lot of environmental work, but it's on paper, on air, and on television.
Thank you.
But on ground, there's nothing.
Thank you.
Now, I want you to get me. I'll give you. Everybody will want to adapt a tree or a bamboo from here.
Thank you. We finally have one question from somebody can translate. Yeah.
All right, hello everybody. So it's true that this issue on climate change and terminology affects us as deaf people, and especially the concern and the involvement of media. So my question to you is, how have you included people with disability, and especially deaf people, because it is true that all these things we are missing out on all this, and we are missing out on discussions about climate change. So how would you involve people who are deaf in these discussions?
Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to put them in one big. Peter, you will look at what you're calling that information about what are you taking into the indigenous communities and what. Benson will talk about this language issue in 1 second, because we are run out of time. Ruth, you'll look at access. They're saying they're not getting us. What can we do about it? Then Pam will talk about the question of the women that was asked, the gender question in this whole debate. And then, are we missing the story? The one, I would like Ruth to take that one in 1 second, so we can start from Ruth here as we wrap it up.
So mine was about access to us journalists, media houses, and all that. I'd like to say that after this, I think we really need to create or have some efforts go towards public awareness about climate change and the whole discussion about financing and everything. Okay. At the Kenya Editors Guild, we do hold public forums. We have done that severally in the past through town halls, where we go down there and meet our constituents, our clients, the audience, the people that listen to us, and have discussions with them and help them to be able to create a bit of climate literacy for them to understand the debate in levels that are beyond them. Okay. In places where they cannot reach. Okay. In halls like these ones, in meetings like these ones where you and I in the villages cannot make to, we can take them down to them and say, this was discussed, this is what was agreed, this is how we are going to keep track of it, break it down to them. Okay. The amount of money that has been contributed or that has been set aside, this is what it is going to do for you. Okay. Do you have any questions about that? We can follow up on accountability. We can get the public engaged and actively involved. Okay. We can do this through Twitter Spaces, for instance, and Mr. Odeng, I hope you can offer us that opportunity, and also GIZ, you can offer us that opportunity that from here we take it to the people. Keep that discussion going until COP28. Okay. I would like to speak more, but I don't think I have the opportunity. I'll let my colleagues also say something.
Just note that we do not sell news. We do not charge you to give us the story. That is one thing. If anybody asks for money, that is the wrong person. The people, there's a stories going around that you pay so that I can cover your story. We do not do that. We do not do that. Peter? For Peter, there's Pam, the gender question, very quickly. Pam, yes. Yes. Pam, yes.
Thank you. I think I really liked you've made me actually think outside the box. I think we've more or less focused on the woman in the village, but we haven't focused on the woman in the urban center and how she has to make a call to just get a gallon of water. I think that's a big challenge to us, and it's a new aspect for us to cover. And as I say, the big challenge as I live here is keep the momentum, because I think this is with this inaugural summit, it means that we keep the momentum until COP28, and I hope it doesn't die down as it's always done. So I hope we can keep the momentum and have great stories even up to the next year. But I know for sure the climate change, the climate change discussion is very, very big, and it's quite big in newsrooms. So we are going to keep the momentum, and thank you.
Thank you. Out of this discussion, even to Prof from the university, we now realize that the woman is at the center, at the closest human being to climate, to the resources that we have. The story will be followed. You have it from our side. Thank you. Peter, very quickly.
Many questions, many answers. One, for partnership, I offer you immediate partnership for training starting tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Because that is the question, capacity and training. Peter, thank you for that offer. Yeah.
On loss, there is something passing here, loss and damage. Please avoid this terminology because it is still being discussed. The design is still on, and loss and damage, as we are talking now, is still not yet a functional fund.
Oh, yes.
Please get this one right, but do not jump up and down that there is now climate change fund for loss and damage. The architecture of that will be very complicated. It involves insurance, payment of all. Please avoid this. Don't talk about it. Finally, yes, the real question is, I'm now responding it. One, please, FLOCA, design, solve all your questions. For the people with disability, within the financing locally led climate action program, we have done two things. We have given the decision to the lowest level in the world, number one. And one of the conditions under that, all must be included. Women, people with disability, the old WASAs, everybody is included. But at that level, so that the decision is down, PESA is down, for us is simple to take a take. So all are included in that.
Thank you. And to respond to that, the media is already doing, if you check on our televisions, we have translations. Even this session, we have sign language. So we are factoring that in. And thank you very much. Ruth, in a few seconds. As we finish.
Yes, I'll be brief. But before I go to the question of are we missing the story, please let me just highlight that the issues of capacity on climate change were actually anticipated by the Climate Change Act that we just amended now, 2023. And the Ministry of Environment is to develop a public gender and civic education capacity building framework, implementation framework. And the whole idea then is to unpack, to look at the scope of capacity building needs and unpack that. And GIZ, we are supporting the Ministry of Environment, and we will be supporting them to do that framework. And we will then also ensure that we have a media capacity building component, looking at the scope of capacity needs and designing a curriculum. I also really like the idea that there's an existing curriculum that can be leveraged so that there's more, we can leverage on that to raise more capacities around media and editorial issues. Now, going to my topic, are we missing the story? Let me just mention that I think the challenge is also on media. And let me still reiterate that I don't think climate change reporting is boring. I think you can get money from climate change reporting. Right. And there are partnerships, they've been offered by the National Treasury. There are other organizations that you could partner with. As GIZ, we are doing a lot of media pullouts on specific days on climate change, and we could partner more to bring the capacities, to raise the capacities around climate change.
So finally, Peter, in 10 seconds, please. Benson, yes, sorry.
Very good. I think there is a challenge on both sides. So much bashing has been done towards the media, but I think the scientist has a responsibility to step down from the ivory tower and learn to communicate in simple language. I think for our friend who raised the issue of people with disability, you couldn't have been more right. I'm not an expert in communication, but I believe knowing the constitutional basis for our laws, there is enough room in our legislation and in the current practice that we see, like Ken says, translations and all that we need to happen. So I believe it is a challenge to the Guild and to the media houses. Okay. And I would say to our two partners, the government, as Peter says, there is already foundation in FLOCA to ensure that, and development partners, that we can translate these in a special way so that we take care of the needs, those special needs that our colleague has raised.
Very sorry we had to overshoot the time a little bit. There's a lot of interest. So let's clap for our... that is not a very good clap. Eh? Yes, appreciate them and thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, panelists, for your time and everything else. Thank you. Their photo, the panelists will take a photo here, please.